Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Grant Turner is literally in the air right now, Mark, on his way to the World Championships. We love Grant, but that guy's also a really hard worker, man. You and I were talking about people that got a lot on their plate off the air. That guy's a rambling, traveling man and does a great job and has built some amazing relationships literally all over the world.
Yeah, it's nice to have him this time of year, too, with Worlds and everything that's going on with wrestling. Because if you ask me to pronounce some of these names, I'm just going to quit. So, because I don't know their first names, that's the problem. If I knew their first names, then I'd probably be a little bit easier. But, yeah.
Like Big Tony. Cassiope.
Just call him T. I just call him T now. So
Big T. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good.
You and me had a conversation just on the phone the other day, about 40 minutes, and it reminded me that's really kind of how this podcast started. You know, in my mind, it was just having conversations with people about wrestling, like while I'm walking around and making breakfast or doing the laundry or whatever else. And
what were we talking about? Do you remember?
All different things in wrestling, you know, some of them that we'll put on the air and some of them that are conjecture and that we won't put on the air.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But these are our opinions, nobody else's.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but this is, you know, this is sort of the homogenized version of that. But it's just a lot of people talking about wrestling. And I got to, Willie Saylor and I ended up talking for about 40 minutes last night. So that, you know, that's a lot of those things, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, lots to get to. Let's start out with the participation numbers. So Flo put an article out about the boys and girls change since it goes back to 2001. And we'll try to give you an abridged version of this, but it's just short of 245,000 for boys in 01. And then it's 256,000 in 2023. So basically it's, you know, not even 1% growth. It's been really flat. I think it looked like the numbers were between like 237 and 273 on the given year.
We peaked.
Yeah. So the girls, and we always try to make sure we get it right, but at this age, they're girls, not women. 3,032 in 01. Not a year. Every year it increased. There was nothing where they ever fell back a year. And last year, 49,100. So, I mean, just gigantic growth, which is, I guess, what you'd expect, right?
Yep. Especially with the success that, you know, the U.S. women have had on the national scene, how they've moved up the ladder from, you know, now being one of the top 2 or 3. I think 2. Some people would say maybe 3 still, but I think they're one of the top 2 teams in the world. So, you know, when you have success, people are going to follow. And our youth programs and, you know, middle school and high school for these young ladies has just taken off. And you're seeing the results when you watch these, you know, junior worlds, cadet worlds. You're seeing these girls compete with some of the best all over, and we're holding our own, if not dominating certain places. So that's great news.
Yeah. I like the 50,000 foot view. I also think there's the view looking up, which is there's probably a lot of kids. There's probably a lot of brothers and sisters where the brother was wrestling and the girl had to do something else. And I was coaching a kid in middle school, and sometimes they would bring the sister over and she would just sit there and watch TV. And now she's wrestling and has placed at stated a couple times. The boys doing Greco stuff, but I'll just say it one more time. All the lessons that we learn from wrestling are not gender specific. They're great lessons.
Yep.
And everybody should have the opportunity to learn them, regardless of what gender you are. So great news there. I'm glad they put that out. It's good for people to see that. Tide, I don't know, distant segue, but Beach Worlds happened. I think, you know, I'm involved a little bit in the beach wrestling world. And I'm specifically have a connection to this. Eliana Bomarito just won the beach world and the 23s, U23s, and the senior world in Romania. My buddy Scott Cutbirth was refereeing over there. Mario Flores, my buddy from Michigan Rev Wrestling, was coaching over there. Ed Duncan was over there. Significant moment for us in beach wrestling history. First time the USA's had a champion. Eliana's a special kid. She wrestles heavyweight in junior college. I think it's like 225 pounds. And she had to go to junior college because at the 4 years at the NAI's, WCWA, the biggest weight class, like 160, 170 pounds. So this is her path. Beach wrestling is going to be her path. She has one more year of collegiate wrestling. And then unless some rule change happens, this is her path. But to come right out, it's unique scoring. Takedown is point, push out is a point, feet to back, like directly to back, not like hit an elbow, like flat to your back is 3. And the match is over at 3. And it's a 3-minute period. That's it. And it's gaining popularity for the Olympics in 28. So really good stuff for her. Her mom is a fan of the show and was super supportive of what we did in Michigan Border Brawl. Very, very good person. So couldn't be happier for the Bomarito family and for Mario Flores. I think it's probably, I shouldn't say this, but I would guess it's definitely his first beach world champion, but probably one of his first world champions, period.
Yeah. I hope they moved the weight. I hope they add a weight class to the 4-year schools because you want to give these individuals an opportunity to perform. And we do have some great, heavyweights always been so popular, in men's wrestling. You look at the past world champs and Olympic champions, and they're icons in their countries. Bruce Baumgartner in the United States, all the world and, Olympic medals that he received while he was performing. And I got to wrestle in college with him for a year. So,
you guys on the same team in Indiana State?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I never knew that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, when you get to be around an icon, and he was such a hard worker in college, even though I was just a snot-nosed kid, in my early 20s when I was there because I went my junior year. But you get to see different things because I wrestled with Wayne Cole in junior college, and he plays third at Division I. So, I got to be around some really good heavyweights with really good work ethics, and I'd like to see women's wrestling have that opportunity, and I can't. Unless the numbers aren't going to be there, I just can't understand why we don't have one yet, or we'll have one real soon. So, congratulations to the young lady from Michigan on her whatever she did. So,
not whatever she did, she won a beach.
Well, she won world. So I haven't watched beach wrestling yet. So I can't wait to start watching it.
Right, but we can just say congrats on her being a world champion.
Yes.
Let's give her flowers. She don't earn it. So. All right, so we're going to spend a lot of this podcast, I think, talking about the World Championship. So let's talk about that. So the first part of this is crazy, man. So Justin Bash and Eric Olenowski kind of got into it on social media about what UWW was posting and who was coming from Russia and who wasn't. And there was... I like Eric Olenowski a lot. I've done play-by-play with his brother Christian. They're both really good people. Eric works for UWW at a very high level. He's from Mizzou, so okay. I know him. He's from Virginia, but through Mizzou. And Real Sports with Brian Gumbel did an episode on the atrocities of what's going on in Iran, and they tried to interview him, and Eric was with their delegate and was forced to walk him out. So he's kind of been put in a position where he's done nothing wrong, but, has sort of been, tied to some things where people are unhappy. So Russia was apparently not going to, all the Russians were not going to be able to get to wrestle, either they were part of the Russian army with the war in Ukraine or political stances, things like that. It turns out now, it looks like everybody's wrestling.
Yep.
Okay. And GT and I spoke about this briefly yesterday because he had turned in our picks. So shout out to Gary Abbott for letting us have picks on the World Championship stuff. You and me, GT chips in, but the NCAA one is primarily you and me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we did that one. That's our wheelhouse. He's in the middle of coaching a team, so as it should be. But, you know, and I'm a kind of person tries to give people the credit that that deserve it. And GT does our picks. Like, there are certain guys I would pick, like Odegoro, Ugiev, Taylor, you know, but to go through 30 weights is not anything I would have any expertise in besides looking at the rankings. So, but he said you know, I think he probably realistically, we might have changed a pick or two now knowing who is in. Article on UWW and Flow. UWW has announced that while it's still subject to change, as of right now, Russia will be bringing all of their number ones to the World Championships. This includes Sidakov and Sajalayev. The full press release is in their article. 235 individuals from Russia and Belarus underwent background checks. 26 individuals were deemed ineligible either due to active support of the ongoing war or confirmed membership in military or national security agencies. And so then they decided to say, well, it doesn't matter. You know, originally they were not going to get to wrestle. Now they are. So Ugiev, Magomedov, Mamedov, Zurbiev, Sidakov, Usmanov, Bagiev, Kurbanov or Valiev, Sajalayev, and Kurbanov is the roster. First of all, shout out to me for pronouncing all those names correctly.
Well, we don't know if you actually said them correctly.
No, I did.
It sounded good.
I did.
Okay. Well, you say that, but I wouldn't know. Because,
I did.
Okay.
I did. Gary Abbott will validate that.
Congratulations, David.
That's a big deal for me. Okay.
Yes.
So, you could be supportive, Ostrander. Be like,
I am. I said good job.
Well,
I can't.
We don't know if you actually did it right.
I can't confirm that every one of them was pronounced correctly, but I'm just saying if you think you did,
it's not supportive. It's not supportive.
Well,
all right. All right. Anyway,
so your opinion on them coming and letting their whole team? What do you think? Good, bad, indifferent.
I think if you're a wrestler, right? I'm trying to put myself in the position of a USA Wrestling wrestler or Bill Zadok and company, right? I think you want to wrestle the best. I think that's, if you're a champion, you want to beat a champion. Like, let's take the most obvious one. If you're Kyle Snyder, you want to beat Sajalayev. You're probably also not putting any mental energy into it at all because it's not anything you can control. You're controlling your workouts, your weight cuts, your weight management, your nutrition, your peaking, your skills, techniques, strategy, tactics, acclimation, all these other things, right? Your champions control what they can, and they either don't worry about the rest, or if they're religious, they pray about the rest. Okay. Like, that's what people do in all walks of life. And it's one of the hardest skills in the world to manage, or to master rather, to manage your emotions and to not have negative energy from things you have no control over no control over anyway. So, I mean, my opinion is, you know, it seems if they're going to let them wrestle like underneath the neutral flag anyway, you might as well just let them wrestle for Russia. Because, I mean, my friend, who's a very high-level coach, told me if the Russians weren't allowed to wrestle in the Olympics, Putin said, we're just showing up with tanks. So I don't think they're going to be kept out of the Olympics. What's your opinion? And then I'll walk through what would happen if they weren't allowed to wrestle. My
opinion is that athletics should be separated from countries or what their political views are.
Politics.
And, you know, we've had Olympics that were in Germany when Hitler was in charge. We went, so did a lot of other countries. I'm sure there are some that probably did not go, but I remember Jesse Owens winning, and you know, Hitler walking out and not acknowledging his feats that he did, which is ridiculous. But that's just, I don't think the athletes have to believe in everything that their leadership in their country does to prevent them from participating in something that they believe in and that we truly love, the sport of wrestling, to keep it going. So I have no problems with Russia wrestling, Iran, anybody. You know, if the athletes want to come and compete, let them compete. It's athletics. It's supposed to move us closer together, not further apart. Let's put it that way.
You said a lot. That's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I think we should tell the viewers, when you say I remember what Jesse Owens did, you're not actually old enough to have been there.
No, I did, but I watched what, you know what I mean. I watched it on.
I'm teasing you.
Sure. I might be old enough. I don't know. I can't remember when exactly it happened.
You know, I mean, the thing with like that situation is, you know, there were just massive atrocities
Yep.
that had happened. You know, if we go to more recent, like the 80 boycott that we did and the 84 boycott that the Russians did, yeah, I was 10 and 14 at the time. And I guess like the when I think about those boycotts, all I think of is like Lee Kemp. I think of like a guy that didn't get to wrestle that was so good, you know, like
Yep.
There's other people, and you know, and it's really hard to be the best guy in the world for 4 more years, you know, like,
Right.
So I don't know what it accomplished. Okay. Like, I don't feel like we crippled Russia in any way, or they crippled us in any way in 84. Again, these are the opinions of Mark and me and not USA Wrestling. Although I don't think we're saying anything controversial, but just for the record there. So the only thing I would say, which is a caveat to what I said, is if you know somebody's cheating, okay, like if I know for sure my opponent from the high school across, 10 minutes away is cheating.
Okay.
There's a part of me that says they shouldn't be allowed to wrestle. Now, that would be more to do with like doping and things like that, not political stuff. And there's one thought that popped in my head, and I certainly don't want to get into this, but I would say this: no matter who our president is, there's about 45% of the people that don't support that person's policies and beliefs. Like, doesn't matter if they're red or blue. Like, we are very much an ununited country politically. Like,
Yep.
If a president got 60% of the popular vote, it would be amazing. Like, that would be a landslide. So your point about like a person can live in a country and not support everything that country is doing is dead on the nuts accurate. And yeah, it's a mess. Like if we're taken over by a dictator and all of a sudden we weren't allowed to wrestle because the rest of the world didn't like us, like that seems tragic for those athletes that are put thousands upon thousands of hours into it. So just to remind people again, first of all, go on themat.com. There's unbelievable articles on here, previews they broke it up in 6 different parts: Greco, men's, women's, okay? And then first 5, second 5 weight classes in each of those. So there's 6 articles up there covering all 30 weights.
Yep.
Okay. So lots to look at there. And I don't know that we're going to go through and pick every weight. I mean, the matches I think a lot of us are looking forward to seeing are like, I really want to see Sajalayev Snyder. I want to see Yazdani Taylor. I'd like to see Dake Sidikoff. I'm looking forward to seeing Helen wrestle. She's had kind of an interesting journey. I have met and liked Kayla Miracle through Lee Pritz and Sunkiss, so would love to see her win a world title. I mean, obviously you want to see all the Americans do the best they can, but just a genuinely nice person. I love watching Otaguro wrestle and I want to see Higuchi Ugaev if that happens. And then the things that this is super USA Wrestling biased. I'm super interested in how we do at the Olympic weights in all 3 categories. because this is the first. And I thought about this last night, the word I was going to use. I wasn't going to say this is the easiest way to qualify for the Olympics because it's not easy. Okay. But it is the shortest path. Okay. If you take top 5 here, you're in. You don't have to go to your continental. You don't have to go to the last chance. Okay. So it's not the easiest, but it is the quickest, most direct. For sure, it's the most direct. I think that's a fair sentence, right?
Yes.
Okay. So just to review one more time, top 5 from the world, which is different from the last time, which was top 6. Top 2 from the 4 continentals.
Yep.
And then the top 3 from the last chance tournament. The quick breakdown is there will now be a true 5th match at the Worlds, which has never happened. I shouldn't say never, but it didn't happen in the last quad. And there'll be a true 3rd match at the last chance. So in other words, you take 3rd, I take 3rd, we got to wrestle. And I said to GT the other day, I go, this 5th place match will be a brick fest. Like these true 5th matches are going to take 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like if they're close at all, because, that's important. The other thing is this is really important for countries all over the world because a lot of funding comes from how many people you qualify for the Olympics. So there's a major emphasis on the Olympic weights versus the non-Olympic weights. People will see that when they see the credentials of the people in the Olympic versus non-Olympic weights and the number of entries in Olympic versus non-Olympic weights. Okay, those are both really important sort of flags to look for.
I know there are weights with 40 plus in the world. So, yeah, I mean, that's, and what you're saying is it's not the easiest way to qualify, but it's the most direct way to qualify for, because you don't have to sit and wait and then figure out who's going to be at the, continentals and, last chance. That's not where you want to be, that last chance tournament. I can guarantee it because the United States have tried there and it hasn't worked out real well for us just because there's so many, athletes that are trying to make it. And, I guess the only thing I would love to see us do in the Worlds is to put out a bracket a little earlier, maybe not the day before the tournament starts, so you could actually figure out where you sit and what your chances are, right off the get-go of how far you're going to go before, you start getting hit by bricks by some of these studs from other countries. It'd be nice to kind of know because none of the Russia guys – and they're some of the best in the world are going to get seeded. So they're going to get thrown in. Are they going to get thrown in where we're at? We're going to wrestle them 1st or 2nd round at the Worlds. It makes a big difference. And you got to come all, if you do lose, you got to come all the way back to get 5th. And that's not easy.
First of all,
if they make the finals.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Add that sentence first.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So, first of all, you mentioned like, hey, I wish these brackets came out earlier. And it's absolutely true, right? Like that's the marketing of the event, right? Like the NCAA does it really smart. They have the qualifiers. Then I believe the Tuesday after the qualifiers, they pick the wild cards. And then the Wednesday, they have a bracket release show, okay? Yep. And you and I are pretty heavily involved in fantasy wrestling contests. I think much more so than me, for sure, much more so than the average person. We use fantasygrade.com for our ranking sources all year because the guy pulls them all together for us. So shout out to CT for that. But there's all this stuff now, like, oh my God, like so-and-so got the 5th seed. Like, oh my God, like, now, hey, they're on the 7-10 line. They should hit in the 2nd round, right?
Yep.
That generates conversation. That generates buzz. Frankly, it generates in a lot of other sports like gambling, okay? And gambling generates interest in eyes and ears, and that generates more revenue.
If nothing else, it generates anticipation. You're sitting there waiting to see this match. You wanted to see it, and so you're getting excited. So you just keep building up to when this moment's going to happen. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes the 7th seed gets knocked out early or, it just happens. So, but I mean, you're anticipating what could happen and it makes it so much fun to get ready for. And, you know, like you said, you're up at night thinking of words to use and things like that. But we sit up at night, you know, a week and a half before the national tournament wondering, what if this happens? What if that happens? Things like that. And then, you know, you're following your teams and everything else. It would be nice to have it like that. I know it's not possible, or it may be possible, but they're not doing it. So it is what it is. But I mean, we could make picks, David, on who we think's going to win it, but we have no idea where they're even going to be in the bracket. It makes it really hard, you know, to do that, because nobody's a shoe-in to win anything anymore. When you get the best in the world all in one tournament, and that's what the World Championships are, it's kind of hard not knowing where they're seated and how many guys they got to go through and which guys they have to go through just to make it is, you know, a daunting task. So,
well, I think one of the things that you're talking about is, for example, like if you say, hey, I'm going to pick Sajalayev and Snyder to be in the finals, okay?
mm-hmm.
We don't even know at this point if they're on the same side of the bracket.
Correct.
So, and if they are on the same side of the bracket, somebody else is making the finals, obviously.
Yep.
It's mathematical. So I just think specific things like that are, if they could improve that, and UWW has made massive improvements, okay? Like
they have.
It went from top 2 seeds to top 4 seeds to top 8 seeds to weighted brackets. So I think it's important, if you're going to not you, if someone is going to criticize somebody, it's also important to acknowledge things that have improved, right? Like
yep.
Rome wasn't built in a day. But I do think it would make it more exciting. I also think for coaches, it's a lot easier to do game plans, right? Because you have a finite path, especially on the front side. Like you can figure it out,
yep.
You know, with some certainty or at least probability, right? So what matches or what people or athletes are you looking forward to seeing the most?
I mean, obviously all the United States guys, I'd love to see how they're going to compete when it comes, you know, we haven't seen Russia in, 2 years now? I think maybe 2.5. So in Belarus and, you know, Iran, obviously we get to see every once in a while, but they've improved so much as a country, and they are, you know, very dominant right now. And so are we. So it's just going to be fun. I just can't wait for it to start. But I think the women's side to me is really probably the most interesting, in that Japan, who has been the leader in women's wrestling for, I can't even tell you how long, basically when it started, because they were one of the first countries to really take off. They only have one number 1 seed. Nobody has more than one. And that to me is very surprising, because you know how good they are. But I think the United States has, 7 seeded wrestlers.
7 seeded wrestlers, but you said it correctly, 10 countries, 10 different number 1 seeds.
Yep. So that intrigues me. So
but
I'm just looking forward to it, David. In
yeah.
Greco, I know we've not been stellar. It's not really something that we've talked a million times on this, that we, you know, Greco is different in the United States because our collegiate style is more, you know, freestyle type of wrestling than it is anything else. And so, you know, the Greco kids, they don't have the competition to compete against unless they do a lot of traveling. But we got some really good Greco guys that are going to be there that can compete. So I want to see them do well. I hope we have at least 1 or 2, you know, placers that get to qualify for the Olympics right away, and then we'll go through the process of trying to get the rest of the team there.
Yeah. Yeah. So just important for people to understand how critical this tournament is. The other important thing is all the stuff we've said about the Olympic qualifying process in the United States is conjecture. Okay. USA Wrestling has not put out anything that said we're going to do it the same way we did last time.
Sure.
Okay. Well, no, I think that's important. Like, I think we've been speaking about that process assumptively. Okay. And it's because there's no point in talking about it if you're not going to at least make an educated guess. I don't know. They might just everybody wrestles and, like nobody.
But that's not even what we're talking about, really. If you think about it, David, we're talking about automatic qualifiers for the Olympics. We're not talking about how the United States is going to pick their person to wrestle.
I'm about to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm saying. What we've been talking about is how do you get a spot at the Olympics? And this is the first process, and this is probably the most important process because it's right in front of us right now. There's 5 qualifiers out of this tournament that qualify their team for the Olympics.
Yes. Yeah. Top 5.
That's the important part. But
what I'm going to go to quickly is last time, if you medaled at an Olympic weight, you got to sit till the finals of the Olympic trials.
Yes.
If you medaled at a non-Olympic weight, you were in the bottom of the bracket in the semifinals of the Olympic trials. No one has said it's going to be the same. Somebody asked me the other day, well, why don't you just ask USA Wrestling? And I'm like, number one, I don't know if they would tell me. And number two, if they were going to tell me, they would tell me not to talk about it because they're not going to break that news on our podcast. Yeah. Okay? It's going to be a formal announcement. It's going to be a press release. And then maybe I do a mat chat with Rich Bender or somebody like that to talk about that process. So I don't ask questions that I don't need to know. Like I want to know. I want to know before everybody else because that's just cool to know. But I don't need to know to live my life and do my job and to do this job. So, but I get what you're saying. Like, hey, we're not talking about this, but we are because, for example, if David Taylor medals, now everyone's got to wrestle through a tournament to get to him. Okay, like Zane Richards and Nick Lee, like if they medal, it's unbelievable how much easier their path is if it was the same process as last time. Okay, like you and me have talked about the other guys at 57 kgs, like in no particular order: Gilman, Fix, Suriano, Vito, Spencer Lee. Like to me, that's the top echelon of other athletes there. Okay, well, if you put Zane in that bag of hammers, there's 6 of them. You got to seed them 1 through 6. Okay, so 1 and 2 get a bye. If it was just a 6-person tournament, they get a bye to the semis.
Yep.
Well, if you can pull Zane out of that bag and go, they all got to fight it out to get to me, that's a huge difference than just getting the 4-5 match in the semis and then wrestling the 2-3 winner, 2-3-6 winner to make the team.
Agreed.
So it is important that people understand this. I would hypothesize that USA Wrestling would not make massive overhauls to the system. Okay, I think it's become very important that if you do well at the world level, that you're rewarded for that. It used to just be like you just got thrown into the bracket. Okay. So I would not think they would make massive changes, but I do not have any data or inside information that is telling us that. Okay. I want to make sure people get that. Okay. So, but it is the other thing you mentioned, like, well, certain countries that people see to like, this is not UWW's fault, but the seating is wonky because a lot of these countries or these athletes just don't go to the tournaments that you can earn points in.
True.
So like, it's kind of like every year it's a bigger version of what we every year at nationals, like we complain about the NCAA seating, right? Like we're like, well, it looks like they used this rationale at these 7 weights and then these other 3 weights they did what they wanted, right? Like, it's not a thing where you can just go, there's not enough data, okay? Even in the NCAAs, because it's like, okay, Mark, well, you beat GT and GT beat me, and that's a part of the formula. That's part of the RPI, like common opponents, things like that, okay? But just because A beat B and B beat C does not mean A would beat C. That all the time, that doesn't happen.
Yep.
So it's just going to be interesting. There's going to be things that are, quote, upsets if you don't really know the sport. Like you look at the seeds and go, well, this guy got beat. And you're like, or this woman got beat. And you're like, well, yeah, but no. Like, and the other thing is like, you can draw into somebody, like you can be the number 1 seed and wrestle somebody who just has your number, who's just good at beating you.
Yep.
And that's a problem.
Obviously. Yep.
So anyway, all this stuff's going to be on Flow. It's going to go men's freestyle first, women's wrestling in the middle, Greco last. All my memories on Facebook popped up. This is the tournament I did 4 years ago. So very cool. This is when it was a track property, and that's how I got to do it.
Yep.
So
you want to give the listeners what day freestyle starts, David?
What is it? Start Saturday?
I think it starts Saturday.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just go to themat.com. Everything is there, okay? USA Wrestling is crushing this.
Yep.
If you want an alternate source, you can go to UWW or go to Flow or go to Intermat. I mean, just go to a wrestling website. Like everybody's got it, but we got the most stuff at themat.com. So, I mean, go there. They're posting.
I think they wrestle 4 weights on Saturday. And then they wrestle another 4 weights on Sunday, and then the finals of the previous 4 from Saturday.
That's
with the
that's how it works. Yeah.
Yep. So,
yeah, literally just popped up on my phone. USA Wrestling email: powerful USA team set for World Championships. So yeah, I mean that they don't. It's always a 2-day. Each weight is a 2-day tournament.
Yep.
So the other thing is in team race, just so people understand. They can't even tell the team race until somebody makes the finals, because then, like, if you make the finals, okay, well, you're guaranteed second place points. If I make the finals, I'm guaranteed second place points. And now we know who's even eligible for the repechage.
Yep.
Okay. Or the consolations or the backside, as we talked about last week about using different terminology. So just a lot to follow. No bonus points, no tech falls, no falls. For team score, just so people understand that if you're kind of new to this side of it and want to understand, we want to be as helpful as possible in that process. Okay. Anything else before we jump over to the college world?
No, I think we're good. Except I do think they can give out points if you made the semis, because the worst you're going to get is 6, and I think you get team points for 6.
You do.
That's the world. So
no, you're right, but I'm saying until they go, you're right.
Get into the
one
semis.
round, they'll give those 4 athletes all 6 place points. You're right. That is correct. And it's 25, 20, 15, 15, 10, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. I wonder if they'll make the 6th place worth 9, because they're going to wrestle for 5th.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that'll change anything, but, I mean, what I'm giving you is the point system from last year. Okay. All right. So let's start with on the
coaching
college
carousel.
Well, school carousel. So Stanford hired Chris Ayers.
Yes.
Okay. Not a big surprise. I love Chris. Just personal note, really. Chris is like the example of a guy that wasn't a great wrestler, okay, that has been turned into a great coach. And our sport is super weird that if you weren't great at it, people don't think you can be a great coach. And so he goes to Stanford. There's all sorts of conjecture about what the staff is going to be, okay? What I'm hearing is that Leith is staying. Grant Leith is staying there. Deacon is staying because his wife is in graduate school out there, okay? And that Enoch Francois will end up at North Carolina with Rob Cole and Tony Ramos, okay? None of that is validated, verified, but the person that's been telling me all this stuff told me that, and they've been right all along, okay? So shout out to you if you're watching, homeboy. Appreciate the love. So the rumor is that Princeton is going to be a very quick hire because they're in the middle of school and season. And for sure, the 2 assistants there will be interviewed, Joe Dubuque and Sean Gray. I texted Joe, and he did tell me he is interviewing. So that part I can straight from the source. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I like both those guys. All the guys at Princeton have always been good to me. So, but someone's going to get an opportunity at arguably, if not one of the most prestigious academic institutions in the world, to be the head coach of a program. So, thoughts on everything that's gone on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good hire. I'd heard a couple other names that I think would have probably also been a good hire. I don't want to say those names because I'm not, 100% sure that they interviewed. But I think taking a guy from Princeton who's went through the rigors of trying to get student athletes into a school and going to Stanford with the academics that Stanford also has, these guys know how to do it the right way and get the kids that will fit into an academic school like that. So that's a huge get for them. I think Princeton has done a really good job for being such a small school, having guys in the finals of the Nationals, being All-Americans. I think it's a good hire. I'm glad that they're trying to, they're looking at the assistant coaches at Princeton to possibly take over the program, which I think is a great idea because these kids know them. They feel comfortable with them. I think they'll probably keep pretty much their whole team because academics, Princeton and Stanford are probably, neck and neck for being some of the top institutions in the United States for academic reasons. Wrestling-wise, I think they're very comparable also. So, I think it's a good hire. So,
yeah, I think one of the things people need to understand is that I said this to somebody one time, and they're like, that's absolutely right. The better a school is at sports, the more either exceptions, loopholes, whatever they have. Okay, like I remember one time at a state university, the advisor said, you can't get in here without a 28 on the ACT. And I'm like, well, that's not true. Everybody in your football team doesn't have a 28. Like, it's just not true. Like, if you look at another sport, like people that went to certain schools, like in basketball, and you hear these people interviewed and they can't conjugate a verb correctly. Like in any sport, okay, like there's exceptions. Okay, so Stanford is going to be, I think this thing that's good about Stanford is that they're probably going to end up in the ACC. Like, this goes back to all that conference realignment stuff. Like the schools that I'm worried about are like Cal Poly, Bakersfield, and Oregon State, because I don't know what's going to happen to them.
Yep.
And I know Cal Poly, Cerritos is doing a great job of raising money. Oregon State's doing well. Bakersfield, I think, was kind of running everything on a shoestring budget anyway. So it's going to get tricky at a lot of these schools. And this conference realignment, no one cares. The people making these decisions do not care about the non-revenue sports. Like they don't care about field hockey or wrestling or 20 other sports. This is all about how to make the most money. Now there's a trickle-down effect, and people hate trickle-down, the word trickle-down economics, but it does trickle down. Like, okay, if we're getting more in a TV package from the Big Ten network, SEC network, Big 12 network, ACC network, all these different ones, not all that money goes to football and basketball theoretically. So going to be interesting to see who gets hired, and the carousel is spinning, as you said up front. So, and then I think the other thing is, Chris Ayers' first job is to keep all those kids that are there at Stanford, right? Because like he's got some good kids, and who goes in the portal, who stays, all that kind of stuff. So, so speaking of Oregon State, Travis Whitlake, I texted you this. I literally had talked to somebody who's involved, but Travis Whitlake goes from Oklahoma State to Oregon State. Okay. He's from Oregon. Okay. He's a 74-pounder that was wrestling 84 last year because Oklahoma State had Plot, and he had outgrown 165 because he had wrestled 65 the year before. He got sick or hurt at nationals. I can't remember which one, but I don't even know if he was able to wrestle back, but didn't have the kind of national tournament he wanted. But he's a good wrestler. He's, he made a world team, age group world team. 74 is going to be a much better weight for him. And, so he gets a year there. It also tells you that Oklahoma State is going to start Braden Thompson right out of the gate. Okay, so, that's interesting. Oklahoma State's going to have a pretty young team. Like there's a couple exceptions, but like Spratley's young, Fix isn't, Alvarez isn't, Jordan Williams is young. Don't know what they're going to do at 57. Olynyk is older. But then if you go BT, Platt's experienced. Serber's got a couple years left. Actually, Platt and Serber are the same age. And then Christian Carroll, they could start five redshirt or true freshmen.
Yep.
So I think Oklahoma State, a lot of what it has, how good they'll be this year, has a ton to do with what Dayton does, right? If he Olympic redshirts, they don't have anybody they can plug in there that's going to make the national finals or take third or fourth. He's a lock for top 4.
Yeah.
So, and if they do wrestle him, I think they can sneak on the podium at 25, maybe 41, maybe 49. Certainly expect 65. They think Thompson can place. They think Platt will place going up, and they think they have a shot at the last 2 weights. Worst case scenarios, they lose a bunch of those round of 12, round of 16 matches. To me, like Platt and Olynyk and Fix are the guys that would be preseason top 8 at their weight. And so you feel like, okay, that, Olynyk's at a weight though that's really nasty.
He is.
Yeah, that there's some guys above him that he's never beaten, and there's some guys below him that feel like they're on the same tier that he could lose around a 12 match. Plot moving up a weight, and I don't know we're going to get to 125. We were going to do our picks, but I think we're going to run out of time this week. Next week I shouldn't say, because 19 things might happen in the world of wrestling, but
we also have worlds to talk about.
No, I was going to say it'll be worlds, and we'll start doing our picks.
But we promise we're going to get to the college scene here in the next,
by November.
Yeah, well, before the season starts, hopefully we went through at least some of the weights. So that's
probably after Worlds. There's U23s, but I mean we'll be able to put a lot more time in the college thing. So one last thing on the college scene, which I think is fascinating to me, is Jace Roller from Bixby is going to Mizzou.
You told me that at the beginning of the podcast before the audience was there, and you were very surprised, and I'm semi-surprised because what Missouri's been able to do in the last few years is nothing short of phenomenal. The kids that they have. So Roller would have fit in really well at Oklahoma State, with Dayton being, even if he does Olympic redshirt, his next year he'd be his last year, and then you'd think there'd be an opening for Roller right in that area. So
I think they think he's going to be bigger than that, but I could be wrong. I'm trying to look up. He is number 25 on the big board, on Flo's big board, and is ranked number 4 at 138. Let me look that up. So I think 138 is like he's not going to be, I don't think he's a 33 pounder. I mean, he might be right now, but so at that weight, they got Daniel Zepeda, Bo Bassett, Aiden Valencia, Jace Roller. I'm not sure Jace has ever lost any of these dudes. So I'm not saying he would beat them all, but
yeah,
he's also ranked above Omar Ayub and Paul Kelly, who are 2 kids that I've watched wrestle in person, who I'm super impressed with. So here's my surprise. Shane Roller and Jack Roller, they run all the Tulsa stuff. Shane's an OSU alum, was an All-American. I knew who he was. He knew who I was. I met him through Hardell Moore. Really nice guy, respectful guy, really smart business guy, obviously running all those tournaments, but is ingrained in that Oklahoma community, right? In that Oklahoma State community. I don't think there's a surprise. It's not like when I say I'm surprised he went to Mizzou. I'm not like, oh, wow, like why Mizzou? Okay, I'm a Missouri guy. Mizzou's really good. That's not at all what I mean by that. I give Mizzou a lot of credit for going after him because I think a lot of people just assumed he was going to go to OSU.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's smart. That's the number one thing. Closed mouths don't get fed. You lose 100% of the calls you don't make, that kind of stuff, right? So that's number one. Just it's more of not why he went to Mizzou, is that he didn't go to Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a verbal, stuff changes, but huge get. The other thing is that kid is so fun to watch, Mark. He is a go for broke dude. He's got some Dylan Ness in him. Okay, he's a high flyer guy. His leg he had this gigantic knee brace on most of last year. And I think he pinned his last 23 guys he wrestled in the high school season. And I think that includes his matches at Hall of Fame duels. But if not, it was from then on. So like Geary tournament, all that kind of stuff. He's got a college coach in his corner in Ray Blake, who is the Stanford coach. And, Guerrero's son goes to Bixby as well. So he's got that influence. And he's got his dad there, and his sister, Jace's sister, Shane's daughter, is a really good wrestler as well for Bixby. And Bixby's got a good girls team too. I think they lost the state tournament on pinpoints. Like they lost to Union by like 1 point because I was there last year. So I don't want to make a huge deal about it. Just congrats to Mizzou. And he, it was just more of surprising. You didn't really mention it. What do you think about Whitlake going to Oregon State?
I don't know. I have to wait and see. I haven't been overly impressed with Whitlake's wrestling in the last year or two. I don't know if it has to do with injuries. I know he was top-notch blue chip kid coming out of high school. But I think he wrestled 197 in high school, David, his senior year. He wrestled up in the upper weight.
89. He was 89.
So, and then he went down to 65. So that kind of shocked me when he went down to 65 in college for a year or two. But, I think it's probably a good fit if Munoz goes up to, you're saying 84 more than likely?
No, okay, I said that wrong. Munoz is already at 84. So let me get this date out here. We can then talk about this and close the loop on the pod. So at 74, returning are Starachi, Foca, Mackay, maybe Nelson Brands. Dustin Plott is going up. Peyton Mako, Ed Ruth, Kate DeVos, DJ Washington, Troy Fisher, Phil Canigliaro. Those are your top returning in the top 16, okay?
Okay.
So that's 11 guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 11. Nelson or Plott is definitely out, so that's 10. And if Nelson Brand is out, that is 9. Okay. And if Nelson Brand is in, I think there's at least a 50-50 chance he goes 84 and they put in Kennedy at 74. Okay. So Whitlake was ranked. It was Brooks 1, Keckheisen 2, Hidley 3, Munoz 4, Kane 5, Salazar 6, Soldano 7, Nolan 8, Hawks 9, Whitlake 10. And that's because Hawks made it around further than Whitlake, but Whitlake actually beat Hawks in the duel, and his back points were the criteria for them winning. He had the only back points in the duel. I mean, it came down to total points, but I mean, those were massive points. So he's a top 10 guy for sure in the rankings at 74. So if you're a top 10 guy, it means like on paper, Starachi, Foca, Mackay, Peyton Mako make the semis. You're one of the guys that lost to one of those guys in the quarters. Okay. Or the round of 16. If you're 5 through 8, you lost in that round. Okay. But you're expected to be in that 5 through 12 matchup on the backside to place.
Yep.
Like if all the seeds hold, and it's not 5 versus 12 on the back because 5 versus 12 is on the front. So they flip and it's a little bit different. But 5 is wrestling 9, 10, or 11 and so on. Okay. But you're in the mix.
You are. He will be in the mix. I just think that, just play devil's advocate here. I think, you're also adding in Michigan's 174-pounder who went up from 165, Shane Griffith.
Yes.
And I think there's one more from Ohio State that you don't want to sleep on. that's going up to 74 this year. Who wrestled 65 last year?
Karchla.
Yeah. And I think you add those two guys in, it's still going to be hard for him to place at 74. As good as I think he is, I think it's going to be just, if not harder at 74 than it was at 84 for him to place at Nationals. So it's kind of a wait and see. I think he's going to be in conversations. I think he's around a 12 guy for sure. And you just got to get the right draw, and, something's got to happen for you to be an All-American.
Yeah, I know, though, if you're Oregon State, you got to be excited, right?
Sure.
But, this is a guy that immediately comes in the picture and is at least a possible All-American.
Yep.
So that's,
and we'll help them immensely. It gives
sure.
them another shot at being an All-American. Correct.
Okay, so this is a very interesting time of the year. If you're a pro or college football fan, you got all that stuff going on. Now we got Worlds. So set your alarms and everything accordingly. Okay, like you're going to have to do some middle of the night stuff to watch this, or watch the reviews and the previews, and I guess reviews, no previews, but go back and watch the archive matches and things like that. I am heading to Stillwater tomorrow, Mark. Clay Hudson, who is a very important person in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame duels, invited me to play in the golf tournament. Theoretically, I'm sure this isn't how it worked out, but I think I'm replacing Grant, who normally plays in that tournament but is on his way to the World Championships. So I'm certainly not doing any Nike business down there, but just more or less taking his slot. I will be wearing Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear provided by AthletePS.com, so you can go get that stuff. So I'll have my golf shirt on and hat for sure. So, but it'll be fun. And, we do a lot of work. That Hall of Fame duels are coming up again. And so I'm in regular correspondence with Clay and Leroy and Ed and Jack and the good people at the Hall of Fame, Lindsay, and been talking to a lot of high school coaches, and they're very, very excited about it. The field's even deeper this year. I had somebody who's very, very well. Willie Saylor said he thought it's the greatest high school dual meet field ever put together. So that's if you're even in that conversation, that's
high praises from Willie.
Yeah, he's a guy that knows a little bit about high school wrestling, so for sure. So anyway, all right, for GT, who is traveling, safe travels to my brother. For Mark, the wide stage of the show, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We will speak to you all next week.